He is moving closer. He's someone who I am confident is going to run. I'm optimistic he's going to run. Everything is being put in place, but that last decision, which, understandably is a big decision.
And what's his message going to be? Well,
it's a simple and positive message. Think about it. From my perspective, the worst thing about President Trump is that he sees divisions in our country and he cracks them open. He exploits them for his own personal and partisan advantage. Joe Biden is someone who sees the differences in our country and inspires us, reminds us of the ways in which we've overcome them in the past, and will lift us up. I personally have witnessed him comforting and encouraging Americans who've suffered great loss. He knows how to get back up when knocked down, and he's going to restore our place in the world, respect for the presidency, and leadership by the president.
Do you think that he should run, Senator? There's one school of thought I've heard among some Democrats that his time has passed, he's a little older, and that maybe his time would be better spent rallying around someone who he really believes in, since there are so many candidates. What do you say to that way of thinking?
I've heard that argument, but frankly, first, there's another person his age who's getting tens of thousands of young, excited people in the last campaign. He has more experience. He has more experience both in the Senate and as vice president, in the executive and legislative, than any other candidate running, arguably than all other candidates combined. And we don't need someone who's doing on-the-job training.
Does experience matter? Because we have a president who had no political experience.
And we've seen the consequences. Having President Trump, someone who never served either in the military or an elected office as our president, has had real and negative consequences. I was at the Munich Security Conference a few weeks ago. It was obvious how much of a command of the world stage Joe Biden would have as president from day one.
I assume you're talking about Bernie Sanders when you talk about the other candidate who's older. The fact that you won't mention a colleague's name suggests that Joe Biden is running and you're already on Team Biden. Let me ask this question, though. Forget about age for a moment. Joe Biden represents an older style way of thinking about the way government works in Washington. He's a creature of the Senate. He talks about that Mike Mansfield story. Everybody has a story. Everybody in the Senate, even your biggest enemy, is... The Senate's different than that now. A lot of people in the Democratic Party believe that whoever runs for president is going to have to run not as a kind of let us reason together, but as somebody who's going to bring it hard and tough to Republicans. And Joe Biden is not that kind of Democrat.
That's right. And we'll see. We'll see whether what it takes to win in the states we lost last time is someone who is a hammer and tongs far-left Democrat, or someone who actually speaks to middle America, who connects with the struggles of average daily working Americans, and who comes across as someone who is listening to and cares about them. What I've noticed going around the country is that our primary electorate wants to win more than anything else, more than they want ideological purity. And if we're going to win in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, I think Joe Biden is exactly the sort of candidate who connects with the average American, because he doesn't talk about Republicans as if they're evil and horrible. He will figure out a way to lead us forward.
That's a political argument for getting votes. But what about working in Washington as it exists now, in a world where, to get things through the Senate, people would argue that there are not willing partners. Republicans would argue that you guys aren't willing to work with them, and vice versa. That seems locked in.
That's exactly what's wrong about a badly broken Senate. And I think someone who understands sort of what's the deal point, how to move something forward, is more important for us than someone who can just give a great and prophetic speech but has absolutely no idea how to pass legislation.
Let me ask you two important questions. First, in his confirmation hearing for Attorney General, you pressed William Barr on how he would handle the special counsel Robert Mueller's report when it was completed. Have you seen or heard anything since then from the new Attorney General related to how that report will be delivered and or shared?
No.
Do you believe it will be shared with Congress?
I hope so. He did say that he will lean as far towards transparency as he thinks the law and department regulations allow him. If he doesn't fully release the report, I know there will be prompt actions by many of us in Congress, first to press and then possibly to sue, to have that released, because I think it's essential. I am hopeful that Attorney General Barr understands the consequences for the country if it is covered up.
And as a former law enforcement official, do you believe a sitting president can be indicted?
That's a legal question that I'm not going to reach this morning. But I do think the odds that he will face indictment once no longer president, given the actions underway in the Southern District, now in the state of New York and in other districts, I think is steadily growing.
You know, people, when are we going to hear this report?
I don't know exactly when we're going to hear this report. Frankly, I believe it is imminent.